These are stories about my reluctant and courageous journey into understanding my emotions and what I learned. I'm super grateful for the questions you ask because they're guiding this fantastic adventure. This week's topic comes from Angie, who wanted to know how to get through feeling useless and worthless, which means this week's topic is exactly that, getting through feeling useless and worthless. In this video, I'm going to focus on a time I felt worthless. In the next video, I'll focus on a time I started to realize I wasn't useless. Then I'll talk about a time when I knew I wasn't useless. In the next video, we'll meditate, and then you get to watch the Friday or the Friday Ditty, where I wrap it all up and I get a little poetic and a little nerdy. All these videos will appear in the playlist, Feeling Useless and Worthless. If you have a question like Angie did, comment below or DM me on Instagram. I'm Angela, and this is me making sense of myself. And today we're starting with a question, or a statement actually. Tell me about a time you felt worthless. Well, I remember this day I was sitting at the table reading my book. My regular caregiver had recently had an accident and had to have spine surgery. My brother-in-law also had to have spine surgery. So with the caregiver, what that meant is that I had a new caregiver on this particular day when I received the call from my sister that my brother-in-law had fallen and needed to go to the hospital. She's desperately reaching out saying, I need help. I need you to help with my son. And I wanted to be there. And I also had this new caregiver who I'm not certain she wanted to do anything. I think she thought her job was to sit there and play on her phone because she didn't want to do any of the tasks that I had already asked her to do. In fact, she was so upset about it, she decided to start documenting that I was asking her to do these basic things in the house that she didn't think she needed to do. Like cleaning the floor and other things. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I get that call from my sister and I immediately go into, oh my gosh, I need to help. How can I help? How can I support her? I have this long history with my disability of not being myself physically able to do things. And now I have this caregiver here who's basically saying, yeah, if you can't do it, that's too bad because, so I'm not going to help you. I don't know if there's because, but I think like in that moment, what happened is I started to feel worthless. Like I definitively had no value, and it continued to get worse. We had to drive over to the company and I'm saying, hey, I need to be able to get to this place. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't have to help you be human. We're just going to do these tasks, like limited 5 things. I think it was like light housekeeping, helping me bathe, helping me cook, some other things. I don't remember the specifics off the top of my head right now. But talk about a sensation of feeling like absolutely worthless. Like I had no value. In fact, I think that I would say the sensation was I'm worse. I'm being treated worse than an animal because at least with animals you love them. And it was devastating. I did not like it. And so that worthlessness triggered this feeling of rage and anger, which is how we ended up over at the office. But I did not get to go help my sister that day. She ended up at the ER, and her husband did have to have emergency surgery, and I was just here at home at that point, and I didn't even have a caregiver because that caregiver, the situation disintegrated into her telling me I was worse than a 2-year-old, and it was simply because I was holding her accountable and being specific about what I needed, and she didn't like it. Some caregivers, not most, some caregivers come in and they do. They think their job is to sit here and not help me be human. And I think that is a common misconception. Nevertheless, that's not part of the story. Part of the story is that worthlessness and how I got through it. So the rage settled in, or it came in, and it was like, ooh, I need to do something about this, because the office wasn't going to help me. Like, they could not see my humanity at all. So I reached out. It took a while, I think, to reach out to the doctor's office to get the letter back that said, hey, yes, Angela needs help with these things. She also needs the caregiver to be her hands, because she cannot do these things. And then I took that letter back to the company, and the company still said, no, we're not going to help her be human. We're going to limit it to these things. And I was like, wow, this is not okay. And I was still like stunned, and it was, I almost didn't know what to do. So I went into this quiet, like, I had to process through this. What just happened? I had never been treated like that, and I had had caregivers for 10 years. And, you know, we might have had our differences and had to work things out or get through conflict or, you know, normal relationship stuff. But I had never felt worthless. And that is what happened in this situation. So I think, like, with that rage that came up next, that inspired me to take the next step. So this worthless feeling was saying, something is wrong. And the rage feeling said, you have to do something about this. You absolutely do. And when the no came, there was this other feeling that showed up that was like, wow, this has got to be a bigger problem. Like, maybe there was a sense of curiosity, because I started looking online and asking questions. So I started thinking, well, maybe I'm not the only one who's had this problem. Maybe there are more people who have had this problem, because they also didn't want to, that was the thing, they didn't want to help me take my kids to school either. And I'm required by law as a parent to get my kids to school, to doctor's appointments, to feed and dress them and things like that. And they were trying to tell me no. So it was like they took away even, and I just needed help doing those things. So someone to drive the car, someone to help me cook, which I always participated in these tasks. But nevertheless, as I was doing this research, I was finding out that I was not the only parent with this problem, that this is a huge problem for people with disabilities. Mind you, 1 out of 4 people have a disability, and I don't know the percentage of how many people have children, but I guarantee you they have children, and they just need help providing for the children, not becoming the parent. Now, there is a big difference there, right? I'm not asking them to step in as a parental figure. What I'm saying is I just needed help with these tasks so that I could be a parent, so that I could fulfill my obligations as a parent. So that worthlessness led me on this journey to finding courage. And what happened was my old coach, I had an old softball coach who played, who had polio. And he was one of my favorite coaches in the whole wide world. And I thought, I need to call coach and see how does he get through life? What has his experience been with these disabilities? Has he needed help? And what happened? So I called him up, because at this point I had decided, I need to blog about this. This anger is like inspiring my decisions kind of at that point. Mind you, remember, my hands don't work. And I'm coming from this sense of feeling worthless. And all of a sudden it's like, but I've got to do something. So I call him up, and I'm realizing I can't take notes. I can't even come close to taking notes. But I was so angry and so in that moment, I wasn't even thinking about it at that time. So we have a conversation, and I do my best to put together an article that talks about his experience and things like that, and it is hard, and I am frustrated, and I'm like, there has to be another way. What can I do? And then I realized I could talk to people. So remember, I started feeling worthless. I got angry. It kind of became rageful, or it did. But there was all this energy inside me. And then I call my coach. And then I find out that I'm not the only one. Because even after I talked to the coach, I started investigating more, and I found out that there's a whole report that was done by, I think, the Obama administration that recognizes that there is a great big hole in services. That it's like when we talk about people with disabilities, we forget that they're going to be parents, and they need to have value, and how important that value is. And where do you get value at? Isn't that in connection and with other people? Like, these are things that are going through my mind. So I started my podcast, which took a tremendous amount of courage. So even though I had been feeling worthless, I had this rage, I knew that there was, on some deep level, I think that rage was informing me, absolutely not. I have value. I matter. And it propelled me into starting the podcast called Relatively Damaged by Damaged Parents, where I literally went out and started asking questions about how people made it through struggle and what they did to do that. So this was a beautiful journey from worthless into anger, into rage, into going, wait, I really matter. I'm important. I'm a human. And because I exist, that's enough. Like, I have value because I'm here. And then into, I can do new things. So it literally took this really big struggle for me to figure out, I can do hard things. And isn't that great? So I would love to hear from you. I also want to ask you a question. When was a time you realized you mattered? I would love to hear the story about that. These videos are going to be located in the playlist Feeling Useless and Worthless. I'm Angela, and this is me making sense of myself.